Cullen Tiernan here with candidate Josh Bourdon. You're running for New Hampshire State Senate. You have the endorsement of SEIU 1984. Thank you so much for coming here to Concord and to our headquarters. And would you please tell everyone a little bit about your campaign and why you're running?
Well, first off, thank you, Cullen, for having me. And, it's an honor and a privilege to have the endorsement. My campaign, I am running for State Senate in District 19, which encompasses Derry, Windham, and Hampstead. And, I'm running because, honestly, for 7 years now, I've been on the council in Derry, and people are struggling. Things haven't gotten better. People reach out to me day in, day out, and they're asking for help. They're asking for a reduction in property taxes. They're asking for creative solutions. And they're asking to understand where's the leadership, where's the help. I think there are people who have done an excellent job on both sides of the aisle. You're going to find, talking with me, that I am not your typical Democrat. I am the type of guy who, likes to focus on shared values and start with things that we can agree on. And I learned that from some of my Republican colleagues on the council. It's a valuable lesson. And I think if this country started with what they could agree on and work out, rather than starting on some of those polarizing issues, we'd be a lot better off today.
Yeah, so thank you very much for your service to the town of Derry. I know that you've been involved in labor issues there. Could you tell our members and our audience a little bit about what you've done to support labor?
Yeah, so thank you for bringing that up. I guess, not to go off on a tangent, but it does tie together. I would like to kind of start with a little bit of my family history. My great uncle, Earl Bourdon, was a staunch advocate for labor unions in the 70s and 80s. And he lived in Claremont, New Hampshire, and his nickname was the Lion of Labor. I mean, the guy was a rock. He was there on behalf of working class families day in and day out. I can remember as a young child sitting at the family table when we'd all come together around the holidays and just listening to some of his stories and his battles that he went through. From a young age, I became interested in politics and just really learning from his stories and his situation. My family has a history of either military service or political service. I have a great-great-grandfather who ran for governor of the state back in the 30s. Selectman. My mom's a town clerk up in Vermont. My younger brother's honorably discharged from the Army. And it dates back all the way to the Civil War. So, I knew I was going to be involved some way, somehow. And, helping people seems to be my niche and my calling. To get to your point and answer your question. So in 2014, I decided to throw my hat in for politics, and I ran for town council in Derry. I ended up winning that seat and served my first year kind of getting a feel for things and getting my feet under me. And then early into my second year, when you get elected, you start serving and you immediately go into the budget. So early into my second year, that town council decided that they wanted to do a massive cut to the budget in an effort to save. Noble effort, noble idea. It was all about saving property homeowners tax money on their properties. So what they did was they came in so draconian, so hardcore that it left department heads and the town manager no choice but to cut services. And some of the valuable services that they cut that year were firefighters, police officers, DPW workers. They even cut the human resources position in its entirety. I mean, imagine the fourth largest community in the state operating without a human resource, person. And on top of that, to make matters even worse, they closed the fire station. And it just really impacted the safety of our community, the services of our community. And it really showed, I learned a valuable lesson that year. You have to be in touch with your people. And that's what a lot of the reason why I'm running now. We don't have leadership that comes around very often. And I think a state senator should be a person who is in touch with the people, who comes to the districts that he or she represents. So back to that story. So they slashed the budget, they closed the fire station, cut all those services. I mean, this went on for months. People came in begging, pleading, yelling at times at the council to stop what they're doing. These are property owners. I mean, you go from a town council room to having, 10 people on a normal day. When things are going right, the chamber's pretty much empty. When they did that, I mean, that chamber was full. There were people, 200 people in there, people, out, down the stairs. It's on the third floor, all the way down to the entryway of the building, and people were outraged. So the majority of people got together, they signed a petition to overturn, to force a vote, a special election on these very services that they had cut out of the budget. They were denied. They did it right, but the council refused to hear them. Long story short, it went all the way to the Supreme Court in New Hampshire, or Superior Court. They ended up demanding that the town of Derry let the people be heard and hold a special election. That special election was held, and in a record number of votes, it was overturned 3-1. Which was something to celebrate. Not the fact that it was overturned. I mean, I support labor, but if the people chose that they liked that, then we should live with that. But the people didn't want that. They wanted to, they want lower taxes, but they want creative solutions, which I'll get into a little bit later. So they wanted their services left alone, and they really wanted us to be leaders and come up with other ways to reduce their property taxes. So it was a 3-1 vote, historic vote. We restored the services, but to this day, we're still reeling. I mean, a couple of months had gone by between when they cut those services and when the special election happened. And during that time, many valuable members, union members, and service workers, they had to protect their families, so they left. And so I think just the other day, we filled our police roster. And it's 2020. I mean, that dates back to 2015. So it took that much time to fill that roster. We lost a lot of good people. We trained a lot of good people who are now doing a good job somewhere else. And in the end, it ended up costing taxpayers more money because it costs a lot to train someone and bring them in. And it left, thankfully we have a great police force, great fire department, and a hell of a DPW office. They picked up the slack, they kept us safe. They did what they could do during that time to make sure everything was met. But lesson learned, come around your district, be in touch with your people, and don't be so committed to something. I have ideas, and I try and push them forward, but trust your instincts. If the people are telling you they don't want it, either win them over or pivot, adjust, or abandon the idea. I mean, after all, we do represent, the people who vote us in.
Yeah, and
not only that, but the other people who might not have voted for you. You do have just as big as obligation to reach out to them and try and understand where they're coming from.
And I was going to say the Derry Police Department, I believe, is with SEIU. So you're in good company there, and well represented. For our people on Facebook Live, one of the things that I've noticed from your campaign is you've been very active on reaching out to the veteran communities, different communities in Derry, and getting that word out, talking to people, and sharing it virtually. Can you talk a little bit about how you're campaigning in the age of COVID?
Yeah. So obviously, it's safety is paramount. It's our number one concern. Campaigning has been difficult, but in a weird way, there's so many blessings that have come from COVID, and I'm sure people will tell you that, connecting with family, kind of readjusting your priorities to see what matters in life. And the blessing I would say from this campaign is we spend, typical campaigns spend so much time raising money, fundraising, and rushing around to put on all these different events. And there's so much anxiety. Can you fill the event? Can you build that following? And we've been doing some of that, but really our focus has been contacting voters, and that's what matters most. So I can't stand big money in politics. I'm against it. I think politicians today are bought and work for these big movements instead of really talking with the people. So this, one of the silver linings of this pandemic is it's forced me to focus on talking to individual voters. You mentioned veterans. Veterans, I'm not a veteran myself. As I mentioned earlier, my brother is, and I have relatives dating back to the Civil War who served our country. It's a very important cause for me. People have come back from war that I know personally who have been severely impacted. And I've met a lot of really great friends in Derry, in Hampstead, in Wyndham who have fought and who are hurting. And it takes a long time and a ton of courage for many veterans to open up. So I've tried like hell to reach out to them, to get to know them, to try and encourage them and inspire them to share their stories, to open up about their feelings, to be vulnerable. Because what I've learned over the years is when you're vulnerable and when you share something that's important to you, there's a good chance, almost a certainty, that there's other people around you going through those very same issues and feelings. And when you can share that and speak out and speak up, you never know who you're going to reach, and it can make such a huge difference in people's lives. And I'm grateful there's a lot of veteran support for my campaign, because they know my heart. They know I'm not someone who just shows up and comes around every election cycle. They know I'm genuine, and I'm doing things when no one's watching, handing out turkeys to military families who are in need on Thanksgiving, and bringing in hundreds of thousands of clothing items for the Liberty House in Manchester, which is a homeless veteran shelter, and just helping people whenever I can.
Well, this veteran is very appreciative of your efforts on those fronts, and it does take a lot of people working behind the scenes to make a difference in society. I put up a status on Facebook seeing what people wanted to talk about, and two of the reoccurring issues were environmentalism and cannabis legalization and normalization. Would you be able to talk a little bit about how you would see your leadership helping on those fronts?
Yeah, so those are two of the issues that happen to be what are most important to my campaign, and I believe what are most important to Derry and New Hampshire's future. When it comes to the environment, I'm proud of the fact 3, maybe 4 years ago, I started realizing that it was going to take creative solutions to reduce our property taxes. And one of the ideas that I picked up from reading a magazine out of Vermont that deals with solar and renewable energy was becoming a net zero community from the municipal and the school side of things. And so what we tried to do, or what I did, was I founded the Net Zero Task Force. And what that is, it's a bipartisan committee filled with experts from various, from planning, from the schools, from different aspects of local government. And we brought them all together to work on becoming a net zero community by the year 2025. And net zero, as we define it, is that the municipality and the schools will produce as much energy from the sun or other renewable sources as we consume. And so if you think about it, in Derry, we have a transfer station or a town dump and a water treatment facility. That is our biggest electric user in the town. I believe it costs taxpayers around $3 million a year in our budget. And so if we could wipe out that electric bill, that would save roughly $3 million that could be passed back down to the taxpayers, which is a huge amount of money, especially for some of the people who are getting up there in age. They are hurting. I get calls every day. They can't afford. We're driving them out of dairy. They can't afford to live here. And so on the school side of things too, our schools have made great progress, tremendous progress with becoming more energy efficient. But there is a giant opportunity with solar in our schools. And so they have a sizable electric bill. Again, that could be passed down to the taxpayer. But what we've run into, so we approved the committee. We've been around for almost 3 years. The town council, by unanimous vote, supported the idea of becoming a net zero community by 2025. We built a very large solar array that has been exceeding expectations, wildly exceeding expectations with energy production. And we're saving money. If it wasn't for those solar panels, taxes would be heading in the wrong direction. We're holding the line on taxes in large part because of these solar panels. The problem is we have what's called a net metering cap at 1 megawatt. And to keep it simple, it basically says if you build over that, it's not economically viable. And yes, I care about the environment, and if we had endless money, we'd just build it anyway. But again, we can't afford to do that, wouldn't support that. So what needs to have happen is legislation at the state level needs to occur. That net metering cap needs to be raised to at least 5 megawatts. So communities throughout the state, imagine cities and towns throughout the state doing what we're doing in dairy and scaling it up. I mean, if every community could save an average of $1 to $5 million, double that when you throw the schools in there, and that got passed down to taxpayers. I mean, that's a real advantage for them, and it helps the environment,
for sure.
which is good for our kids and for our grandkids. So that's the type of creative solutions that residents are looking for. That's the reason why I have a lot of bipartisan support to be able to I'm the only Democrat, self-proclaimed Democrat on the town council. It's me and a couple of independents, and the rest are Republicans. And again, we join together because we work on behalf of the people, and that's the type of attitude that I'll bring to Concord. It'll always be people over party, no question.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And a little bit more on cannabis legalization. Is there any vision you have for statewide? I definitely appreciate your leadership on the environmentalism.
Yeah. So, we talked about veterans speaking out, and how that relates to me speaking out is, this past September, I just celebrated 10 years of sobriety. So this is a tough issue for me. I'm one of those people, and there's a lot out there who I can't partake in recreational or even medicinal use. I'm an addict, and I'm an alcoholic. So it's something that I have to be aware of. And like I said, it's a tough issue for me. But the reality is, it's a small percentage of us out there. We'd like it to be smaller, but it's not everyone. And we can do better for people who are suffering from substance misuse. That's another issue. But we have programs, there's meetings we can attend if we're seeking help. And we're going to be fine, and we're going to handle it. But there's a lot of other people who can take part and who are taking part. They're going to all of the states that surround us, and they're spending money there. And then they're going out to eat there. So we're losing a lot of revenue opportunity. So it's important that I talk about that, because it's not something I take lightly. It's something that's very serious to my family. I mean, we have a long line of alcoholism in my family, like so many others. Again, it's an issue I do not take lightly, but where it becomes a must is this state is facing, because of COVID, a projected $500 million budget hole. Mm-hmm. And so what are we going to do? How are we going to dig ourselves out? We can't rely on the federal government to bail us out. Even if they did, that's a whole nother issue. They're just printing money, and I get it. We have to do it. We're in a pandemic, but they're printing money. Our kids, our grandkids, their kids are going to eventually, it's going to catch up with them. It's going to leave us in severe trouble. So creative solutions would be to legalize cannabis. We have the liquor stores set up strategically throughout the state. I would think there's a real opportunity to model what they've done under the liquor commissioner and to have a similar approach and to regulate and legalize, regulate, and tax cannabis and bring in those much needed revenues so we can help stomp out that budget hole. And then once we do that, and once this pandemic passes, because eventually it will, again, we can start funding things that are underfunded, like mental health. Maybe it's a veterans hospital, or maybe we do something. Here's an idea. Maybe we pass it back to taxpayers who are their property taxes are going through the roof. So it just seems to me like in a state that claims to be live free or die, it seems to me like it only applies to guns and motorcycle helmets, which I'm all for. I support that. But we can't be hypocrites on it. We should apply it everywhere. We can. That's an opportunity for revenues. The state needs revenues. This pandemic has highlighted just how vulnerable not only our state is, but states around the country are. And I'm not asking. It's 2020. I'm not asking for something that's new here. I'm just trying to keep up with our neighbors. They've tried it. They've done it. It's proven that it's not as bad as everyone claimed it would be. So I think it's time to grow up, and it's time to catch up.
Yeah. Well, thank you for quoting General Stark, and shout out to all the employees at the Liquor Commission. Yeah. I just want to thank you for your time and for coming in here. And if you could just, how could people who want to support you get involved with your campaign? I know you have a Facebook page. We talked about a little bit. What are some other resources that they can reach out to you with?
Yeah, so again, you're going to see that I'm not your typical politician. I'm running because I like to help people. My cell phone number, and anybody can call me if they need me. And I know you're cringing back there, but it is what it is. I'm available, and I can help, and I know people, and I can connect people. My number is 603-998-2433. You can reach out to me, text me, call me anytime. You can also go on my website, Joshua Bourdon, Bourdon, Joshua Bourdon, the number 4nh.com. So it's Joshua Bourdon 4nh.com. And we're always looking for help. We have an awesome call system where we're connecting with voters. So we're looking for volunteers. You can do it from anywhere in the state, from the safety of your own home. And and if you feel like you like what you've heard, if you want someone who's going to show up and be in district rather than just hang out in Concord and do whatever the party tells them to do, if you want someone who's going to put people over party, you can also make a donation by going to my website, Joshua Bourdon 4nh.com.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll be throwing $27, and I hope you'll join me. And thank you again for coming.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Take care.